Okay, we're ready to begin. Sorry, we ran a bit over in the earlier session, but since we're doing really good time so far today, I feel a little bit of indiscipline is okay at this point. But it was, I think, in many ways set the stage for the discussions we're going to have with our other two panelists. We're going to look at the Foxconn group, which I think probably everyone has heard of, the company that is the leading contract manufacturer of many electronics products, including, of course, famously the Apple iPhone. And then American Tower, which is a US-based company, a neighbor of ours, which has contributed significantly to the telecom sector and to the very low cost and the very high data usage we heard about. So many of the themes we heard have been sort of echoing in the course of the day. One of the questions I would have asked Deepak if we had more time was, out of all that investment coming in, how much of it is targeting the Indian market, producing for the Indian market, given all of the growth he talked about, population, per capita income, GDP growth, and so on, and how much of it is coming as investment, mainly as platform to make for export for the rest of the world. And of course, that second piece has been a weak link in the Indian strategy, because manufacturing in general is strong at the mid-tech level, where you use a lot of engineering and skilled talent, where you can overcome the cost disadvantages that India had in terms of cost, logistics costs and transaction costs and all of that kind of stuff. But now it appears that maybe we're seeing green shoots of investors coming in and actually trying to make in India for the world, and not just make in India for India. And here we have a great example of that. This has been one of my concerns about the Indian strategy, that, we can skip the manufacturing and we're already a very advanced services economy. No country has done that. You can't have broad growth, you can't have growth with job creation and growth with equality if you only focus on high-end jobs in manufacturing or high-end jobs in services. And so when will India be open for that kind of business, which can create hundreds of millions of jobs? That's how China did it, that's how Japan did it, that's how Korea did it, that's how Taiwan did it, that's how Hong Kong did it, Singapore did it. I mean, they've all had to go up that chain. And questions, are we on the verge of beginning to do that in India? And if this was something that I was passionate about, when I met Josh, I thought I met a soulmate, because unlike me, but I like to talk about it and think about it, but not do anything about it, Josh is actually trying to do something about it, because he feels as strongly as I do that you have to create these low-end, lower-skilled jobs to engage millions of people. And the demographic dividend can turn into a demographic disaster if we can't find ways to employ all of them. So that was a very long introduction, Josh, but tell us where you're coming from.
Thanks, Professor. Thank you for the honor of having me here. Deepak ji was supposed to be here with me, so he kind of bailed out at the last moment, and he's enjoying the view of Qutub Minar. So, but Invest India does a fantastic job. They have really, truly helped us as a company, and do want to acknowledge this at this point in time. So my journey in manufacturing started in 1990 when I took a manufacturing course in my undergrad in mechanical engineering. And I said, this is what I want to do in life. And I got interested in robotics following that. Went to UT Arlington, and was very happy to see Professor from UT Arlington come and introduce himself. I also went to the business school there, and I mean, really changed my life. But I think 20 years ago, living here in the US in Texas, and got sometimes you have this feeling that you left something turned on, like a stove or a light. It's one of those things. I said, this is India calling, and thankfully my wife also felt the same way, and we went back to India. And I was with the Nokia Corporation, Nokia mobile phones, for about 18 years. And I went to start up the Nokia factory about 17 years ago. And everything, people say it cannot be done in India, was done in India. All done with Indian talent. I was able to in a way, talking about taking innovation from the U.S. to there. And I was able to do that, setting up factories, setting up advanced manufacturing systems in the southern city of Chennai. And it's been uphill since then. And I should say the last 7 years, since I've been in Bharat FIH, a part of the Foxconn group, it's been growing in multifold. The Make in India program, which the government of India launched 7 years ago, I think has been a spectacular success. And the beauty about our company is that we are completely aligned with the government of India's plans. So the government has been so forthcoming in listening to us. So we told that these are the things which will be helpful, for nation building in manufacturing space. Most states in India are in the mid-teens in terms of manufacturing's contribution to the GDP. Some of the southern states, like Tamil Nadu, are maybe a little bit higher. Maharashtra is probably a little bit higher, but most states is very low. And ideally, for a country of India's size and really the scale, it has to be closer to 25, maybe even 30%. And I think it's a very distinct possibility. So my experience is that there is a fantastic policy alignment with the government. The Make in India, the Skill India initiatives were very central to our planning, which was what we do as a group, and what our team did really is skilling these people. So today I'm proud to say that as a Make in India part, we have a 100% women factory. It's 3 campuses. So it's 3, we don't say factories, it's 3 large campuses, 100% women. Of course, we have men as well. A lot of, and these are the guys who do, I think, the magic, the technicians, the engineers. These are some amazing guys who program all the robots we have and all those things. And we have set up these 3 campuses, in doing everything which people say cannot be done in India. So yes, there is Indian IT, yes, there is Indian pharma, and yes, there is Indian manufacturing. And I want to close at least this question, Professor, with this one comment. 2020 was a very pivotal year where the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat is self-reliant India. And so the definition, so we, working with the government, and based on our background, we said that how do we define Atmanirbhar Bharat in our industry, in electronics manufacturing, and manufacturing in general? I said it's actually 3 things. And this came after a few deliberations and thought. Number 1 is, of course, you have to have design in India. The second one is actually make in India, which is already sort of a gap which was filled 7 years ago or 5 years ago at the time. And the third very important thing is making equipment, tooling in India. I call it Indian machines. So design in India, make in India, and Indian machines. So I said this is, and based on that, the last 2 years, we've been chartering our course in India in that direction. We started our R&D center in IIT Madras Research Park, where we do end-to-end design, not just software design, but really end-to-end design, ID, mechanical engineering, hardware, software, the full works for products. And we hope to expand that as we go forward. And it's a fantastic piece of innovation, coming to India, which is not just in software, but now also transcending into hardware. And I think it's going to be an incredible story. There are so many trends which are picking up, and we are very happy as a company and as in India in general. The 5G rollout is going to bring up so many use cases. So we are in telecom, space, doing telecom equipment for our customers. The IoT space is going to be another massive opportunity. The hardware bit of that, getting it done in a secure location and a trusted source is very important. We are doing that. Of course, your phones. The government calls me the billion phone man. In Chennai, me and my colleagues have made 1.2 billion phones in the last 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And so yes, we do make phones as well. And we have women, this is a smaller screen. We have ladies flipping 65-inch screens in our all-women TV factory in Sri City, which is a little bit north of Chennai, in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And yes, sir, it can be done in India, and we're doing it. There's a lot more to do.
Let me just jump into a lot of sort of simple factual questions. How many employees right now do you have?
We have about 20,000.
Okay. And the kinds of products you make?
So we do, like I said, mobile phones,
TVs.
IoT devices, TVs. We do telecom products. We do also the EV electronic modules, the display units, the motor control units, the battery management systems. The electronics modules are made by us for a few customers.
Okay, and so out of the 20,000, a very large proportion are women. I take it, right?
About, I think it's close to 90%.
90%, wow. Now, we heard earlier in the day that the women engagement in the labor force is particularly low in India compared to many other countries. So what issues did you face, or did you face any issues in being able to hit that kind of level of employment? And if so, how did you handle it?
No, I think for me, it was a no-brainer because this idea is an old idea. It actually came from my mom, who used to be a teacher in the government school in Chennai or Madras at the time. And so when I moved back to India in 2005, I'm an engineer, so I like formulas for everything. And so I said, what is the formula for, the people in the factory? And various ideas came, from across the board. And I was sitting with my mom, and she said, why don't you hire my girls? and it's just so simple for her, and so complicated for me being an engineer, right? And so we tried it, and it was a fantastic success. And so what we do is it's open for not just women who live in the neighborhood, it's also women from all over India. So today we have women from different parts of India, and we provide them accommodation. We provide them very safe dorms, and everything is taken care of. And this is very appealing, when people want to sort of migrate to a new place, different language and whatnot. So it's interestingly, in our factory, our production supervisors are also ladies. And these are engineers. And I asked the ladies, I said, how many languages do you speak? I said, it's just two. I speak, English and Tamil. Surprise, And so what about so we have ladies from Odisha, we have ladies from Jharkhand. I said, how do you manage? I said, it's okay, sir. We learn a few words, and then it's just pure, sort of engagement. And we help each other out. And it's been an incredible thing. So I think really, I think it's just an attitude. We are a 24/7 operation, so women work.
3 shifts.
So the government has an enabling policy which does that. We ensure their security and safety, the accommodation and things like that. And I think once they feel comfortable, then I think it starts. And I'm very happy to say that many other industries are also following this idea, which is, I think, very important in India as India unlocks the sort of hidden, sort of talent workforce, and so really translates this to a massive democratic dividend.
I've seen in China, of course, that model is quite widely used, right? Yep. You have the dorms right next to the factories, people migrating from the interior into the coastal areas. But we haven't seen much of that, I think, in India, at least in the manufacturing end of it. But you're telling us this could be the beginning of that kind of process. How competitive is India now compared to China as a manufacturing location for exports? If you can, do you have any views?
I think it's a great question, it's an important question. And I think maybe I'll back up a little bit and then I'll give a little bit of background. So I think global supply chains, regardless of electronics manufacturing or any manufacturing, looks at market and markets, where do you want to deliver products to? And the supply chain is a function of many things. It is, of course, cost arbitrage is one of them. The skill and the skills capability. Of course, it's we call it talent. Logistics, is important. The supply base, the supply chain, is important, and all of this drives for global supply chain leaders, and actually many of the best run global supply chains are U.S. companies. Phenomenal, companies both in the East Coast and in the West Coast and everywhere here. Look for a thing called supply chain resiliency. Resiliency is your ability to manage risk and at the end of the day really deliver. And all of these things matter. It's not just the labor cost arbitrage, right? It's all of these things. And I'm very happy to say that the last 17 years I've been in India, I've seen this improving. And matching parameter to parameter to the best benchmarks in the world. And it's something which, very happy to say that the Indian government has the vision, and the states and the different state and the different bodies in the government of India have the tenacity to actually execute it on the ground along with us. And so yes, it's definitely on the right direction.
Two related questions. One is labor management. One often hears there are problems with Indian labor laws. They're not flexible enough. They need to be reformed, but they're not being reformed, and so on. And if you operate in a labor-intensive business, you're going to be even more susceptible to those issues. And the other question is the scalability. Can you, if you're 20,000, if you go to China, I think I went to one factory, at least I didn't go inside, but we drove by it, the compound of the Foxconn in Shenzhen, and you kept driving and driving and driving before the block ended because it was such a huge, I think they had 300,000 employees in that one location. Now, I'm not saying that, India wants to go to that scale, but is this scalable? Because in garments and textiles and so on, we had difficulty scaling it to the big size units.
I think, India, India is open, right, as Deepak said, and it's open to ideas and benchmarks. And of course, India is going to achieve the outcomes in its own way. And yes, there is a lot of benchmarking, which we do, and we take it. And we've been quite successful in adopting different ideas, there. And now, that said, India does need these large campuses, to have better efficiencies and so on and so forth. And, so labor as an availability element, India is going to add anywhere from 180 to 200 million people in the next 25 years. The journey Prime Minister Modi calls Amrit Kal, right, where India is going to become a developed country by 2047. We're going to add 200 million people, and that's a phenomenal number. So the question is, how do you bring them, to the places of work? You just cannot be everywhere. The factories cannot be everywhere. The good news is that the urbanization is already happening, as what Deepak said. And the question is, how do you want to accommodate them? And that's where these sort of accommodations, it's very much like the student housings, right? Which I'm sure you're running short of, right? Always.
Right.
And it's how do you provide that? I think that's going to be one of the challenges which I think India will face. And I think once you're able to crack that, I think you'll be able to do that. The second is how do you keep them happy? Right. If you're challenged, you're going to be happy, and as long as there's reward along with with that effort. And I think more importantly in India, I think the Indian work style is very similar to the U.S. work style. It's more inspired. I've set up factories in a few countries in the Americas and in Asia, a little bit in Europe, not too much in Europe. So I've seen similarities of how to do this. So as long as you're able to inspire the team, then engage, and by engaging them, in a very meaningful manner, not it cannot be a facade, right? You have to be real. You have to keep it real. Then I think it becomes possible. And we've been quite successful in doing so, keeping them inspired. Actually, it's a challenge to keep them, because there is so much opportunity, around, and so the challenge is to keep them, entertained and motivated, with you. So labor is I personally don't think it's the government's job. I think it's companies' ability, to have the right kind of thing, and we've been able to do that. I've had fantastic support from our board and headquarters on this matter, and we've been able to push this through.
Okay, one other quick question, then we'll open it up to audience questions, and that is the role of infrastructure. We often hear in India this is a real constraint. You don't have ports, you don't have trains, you don't have, the transportation is, roads are not very good, or all points are not well connected, and so on. Maybe the nature of your product, you don't need that much of the physical infrastructure, but could you comment on that aspect?
I mean, obviously we need infrastructure, to make, but like I said, I've made over 1 billion phones, with the infrastructure which is available. I think, and I kind of call it point-to-point infrastructure. So, and you cannot boil the ocean. You just cannot fix the infrastructure. I mean, if you look at the U.S., it took U.S. to build infrastructure over 100 years, right? And so India's on that journey. India's still a very young country, right? And so you got to give it time. But in between, let's fix the points, right? So if you have an industrial complex, so then you focus on the industrial area, and then provide the right kind of power, the water, any kind of accommodation facilities needed. Make sure that happens. And the government has more or less done that. In most states, they're able to provide that. And then comes the port or the airport infrastructure, and they have been improving, right? Can it improve? Yes, it can improve definitely a lot more, right? So I think definitely infrastructure is improving, but I think I would focus on the point-to-point. And then it's a question of multinational companies and companies in general is to plan based on that. It's all about planning. It's like many people didn't show up in the morning because it didn't rain, and I almost didn't make it in time in the morning, but I cheated, I took a cab instead of walking from my hotel. So you just have to plan, a little ahead of time so that you're able to execute. And this becomes very important as India transitions to becoming a critical part of global supply chains. And it's very possible. So you just need to plan ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. Question in the back? The lady in the back, and then you sir in the back. Yep. Over there, Elena.
Hello. I want to ask you if you also think about environmental sustainability of your product, because one of the problems that the developed world is facing is of the e-waste. It is much cheaper to replace electronics than it is to fund the manpower to fix things. And India had a culture of using things to the bone, right? A TV would be like used and repaired so many times and then handed down and then eventually donated. And we just don't trash electronics that easily, but that would obviously change because of the development that is going on and the billions of phones that are being manufactured, billions of devices that are being developed. So do you also think about what would be a responsible way in which we can figure out how to dispose of them without causing too much harm to the environment?
Absolutely.
Before you respond, Josh, maybe let's get the other question too, because we're a little bit short of time.
Sure.
Sir? Yeah.
Thank you. My question is more to do with, you've been involved more on the high-tech manufacturing side, but from the high-tech side and manufacturing in general, a lot of talk about aspirations and so on, and going from 20% of GDP to 30%, as you said, but the capital intensity associated with that. And how does that get funded? And not just for chip manufacturing, which we all know is very capital intensive. Could you talk about that and that whole ecosystem and subsidies from the government and how all of those things need to click for this vision to become a reality?
No, both are fantastic questions, and I'll take the ESG first, and this is also a great question. It'll need a lot more time to speak, but I'll if the clock says 2 minutes. ESG is built into our process, right? Deepak ji talked about circular economy. Yes, you're right. It happens in India, but ESG for me, in using renewable power, is part of the formula. We just pick it right when we design the factory. In terms of all our manufacturing processes and electronics, has been lead-free for 25 plus years. It is, we do mechanics and metal manufacturing. Our facilities is zero discharge, so we don't really pollute the environment. And in terms of e-waste, there's very firm policies on that, on how to recycle them. And so all of these things are already part of the package. And so really, when we try to improve on these things, as we speak, but for us, it's the way we do things. And in India, I think it's been very, very supportive to do all of these things. So I think it's a way of life for us. And I think India will continue to go. And I think possibly there's one area where we could have some kind of reverse innovation, coming back to other countries, from India. Your question on capital intensity and how you manage this, electronics is super capital intensive. Metal, is this capital intensive. You've got hundreds and thousands of CNC machines which sort of crank out the metal, molding machines. So the whole mechanical bit itself is huge. You think that punching presses are only common in Detroit and Ohio. We have a lot of punching presses which do smaller high precision antennas, and other parts. We have very advanced CNCs which do that. So the mechanics bit is very capital intensive as well. The PCB, right? When the multi-layer flexi, or HDI sort of PCBs, that is another massive capital intensive space, as well. So is displays. You look at your LCDs, all of these things. So every element of your bill of material in electronics is capital intensive. The way you go about funding it, and this is, America started this journey about 70 years ago. Japan started this about 50, 60 years ago. China started this about 30 years ago, right? And it's going to be multimodal funding because there is so much equipment which is there, which have a lot of IP. We need to be very, very careful about that. But I think the route is going to be, I think we should not plan everything based on government subsidies alone. At least we should factor all the costs and all the investments in a very, very calibrated manner. So there are some government incentives which are designed to help you sort of make the move. You need to think about your own investment plans. You need to look at how to go to the market into providing all of these things. But all of them, as a good business leader, as a good corporation, you should look at how you can get your return on investment. And we look at all of these things and not just one aspect of funding this. But that said, the government incentives, do play, a role in getting the ball rolling. And a lot of countries have done that. India's PLI scheme is a very attractive scheme, which the government of India, Invest India, I'm sure can share the details with you. And all of these policies are framed with a lot of input coming from corporates. And I think that lends a lot of credibility, to what happens in India on this case.
Fred, we're going to have to leave it at that because our time is up. Josh, thank you so much. I wish you all the best with your plans. And I hope next time I'm in Chennai, I can come visit your factories.
Please, and anybody who wants to, please come and visit us in one of our campuses. It'll be a pleasure to host you. Thank you. Thank you.